better as a result of social media presence.
If it doesn't do those three things, then it's on the chopping block.
It's a return on investment discussion.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Daily Dealer Live. I'm your host, Sam Dark, and welcome to the space where automotive comes together to learn, to grow, to share, but most importantly, to execute like we do in automotive. Thanks for choosing to be here on this Monday, December 22nd. Happy holidays week, everyone. We are in the official Super Bowl of all automotive these last couple weeks. Who's feeling it? If you're feeling it, post it to social media. We're live across all CDG social media platforms. We'd love to hear your comments about how this week is going, what your expectations are through the holidays. Again, happy holidays, lest we forget the real meaning. But today we're covering two areas, today's show, that quietly make or break dealership profitability, especially in this holiday season. Security and risk mitigation. First up, operational leadership in a margin-compressed market up second. So first we'll go to transportation, VIN swaps, synthetic fraud, vehicle theft, internal controls, AI misuse. These are no longer IT issues, they're survival issues. And today's Zeigler Zone, proud to come from my own group, head of security, Karianne Thomas, joins the show to discuss all of this and more. Then we'll shift gears to execution, how a top-performing store is in the hunt for 900 units a month. You've got that right. And they are closing in fast. That conversation coming up with Bradley Wise, executive manager at Ferman Chevrolet Mazda in Tampa, Florida. But before we dive in, let's hit today's industry headlines. First up this week, that thing won't go away. You know what? You got to love it. Every now and again, you get a little fun here. First up this week, when 130,000 vehicles when 130,000 San Francisco residents lost power over this weekend, the city got an unexpected stress test of its autonomous vehicle future. A fire at a PG&E substation knocked out traffic lights across 30% of the city. And Waymo's robo-taxis struggled to cope. The vehicles hesitated longer than usual while their sensors assessed chaotic, rainy intersections. And listen to this. Many of those Waymos froze in place, some mid-turn or blocking lanes with hazard lights flashing. Waymo suspended service Saturday evening and didn't fully resume until late Sunday. What does that look like if you're a customer in the backseat of the Waymo? Big picture here, well, no one was hurt, and the chaos was contained, but the outage exposed how far autonomous vehicles still are from the set it and forget it reliability. And on a side note, I personally saw on Twitter, of course, the owner of X had to come in, the owner of X and Tesla had to come in and say, hey, that was not a Tesla vehicle that got stuck in the intersection without electricity. It was Waymo. So props to him. All right, next up today, findings from a new YouGov consumer survey reveal that pricing transparency is the number one condition that makes or breaks a deal. While 63% of Americans haven't been to a dealership in the past 3 years, the 37% who have are far more likely to buy in store. But they don't want to play games. 56% of respondents said having clear pricing terms is their most important consideration for shopping on site, followed by honoring online prices in store and having a friendly, pleasant atmosphere. What turns buyers off? Well, pushy salespeople, confusing fees or pricing, and pressures to buy add-ons like warranties. Well, while this isn't exactly breaking news, the survey results are a reminder that simple, transparent practices will make the biggest difference in closing deals. Next up today, the Southeast continues to be a hotbed for dealership buy-sell activity. Last week, ZT Automotive, backed by the Badar family office, added 4 Mouse dealerships in the Tampa Bay area, including Acura and Nissan locations, expanding their footprint to 16 stores across Texas, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And just north in Georgia, ALM Automotive picked up 5 dealerships in Macon, and Warner Robins from 5 Star Automotive, fitting neatly into CEO Kush Bhatia's strategy of growing a focused franchise portfolio in a high-growth metro area. Meanwhile, Spring Hill Automotive snapped up Sarah Automotive's Chevy store in Bartlett, Tennessee, rebranding it as Dobbs Brothers Chevrolet. The signal? Well, buyers who have clear geographic strategies and local knowledge are moving fast, while sellers continue to prune non-core assets. And don't forget, everybody, you can see this deal announcement and many more throughout the entire year by visiting the CDG Buy-Sell Tracker at cdgbuysell.com. And last up today, new research from the University of Washington and Toyota Research Institute finds that drivers often struggle to safely use their in-car dashboard touchscreens. We've talked about this in the past. In a simulator study, lane drifting increased 42% when participants used touchscreens. And making touchscreen targets larger didn't help. Drivers are still spending too much time looking away from the road to visually hunt down the control they need. So, researchers are recommending integrating sensors like eye tracking or steering wheel touch to make key controls safer and more prominent. Bottom line, flashy, oversized screens may sell, but they come with real risks. And that is a wrap on today's industry news. All right, Yuli, what's up?
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
How you doing? Excellent. Happy to be here.
We've talked about those buttons before. People want knobs and things they can flip and switch and push. They don't want to necessarily go through all these digital screens, right?
Agreed.
So, and how terrifying to be in a Waymo in an electric outage in San Francisco in all the weather and just have the thing stop in the middle of the intersection. Like,
being in a digital standoff. Yeah, I would get out.
Can you get out? Like, is there an eject button? Like,
that's the better question, right? Can you get out? That's where it starts getting terrifying, right? Because it's really easy to solve by just getting out of the car and, hailing a Lyft or an Uber. But if you can't get out, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, what do you do? I think that's a fascinating conundrum in this new world. And of course, Elon Musk went to Twitter to capitalize on that little snafu by Waymo. It'll be interesting to see in the next few years how this thing all shakes out. So happy holidays this week too, Yuli. Christmas is coming up, Hanukkah, all the things, Festivus for all the, I forget how the rest of that goes, but Seinfeld.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm just with you. I know that. But it's a big week, and it's a big week for us in automotive. And I'm excited personally to bring on our first guest today because this first guest, Karianne Thomas, helps us do what we do in automotive best, which is during the holidays, when people are out there trying to take our stuff, she helps us protect it. She helps us keep it. So first up today, Director of Security, Zeigler Auto Group, Karianne Thomas. Karianne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here today.
You and I share a wall. What everybody watches this show. We're almost on the 100th episode of the Daily Dealer Live. What most people may not realize is you and I share a wall. So when I'm on this show talking very loudly, you can hear me over the wall. I'm not today, but usually
no. Or when he's practicing, I get to hear it 3 times before you hear it once.
That is the truth. That is the truth. Well, Karianne, tell us how, as we come into this holiday season, how the heck is biz as it relates to auto theft and all things security in automotive? What are you thinking?
We're like a candy shop for all the bad guys, right? And they all need Christmas presents too, and they want to get them from us. So, it's busy. It's busy every day.
Yeah. So you came to the Zeigler Auto Group how many years ago now? It's been 5 years?
4 years ago.
4 years. And your background, this is a fascinating addition in my mind to an auto group. Many auto groups may not be thinking about this. Your background was you were a police chief in the largest police force in all of Michigan. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be part of the Zeigler Auto Group, Karianne.
Yeah, so 27 years retired from law enforcement and then the military background also. And Aaron Zeigler approached me. Zeigler Auto Group was having a lot theft problem. Cars were being stolen. And they really needed someone to come in and develop a strategy, right? And given my background, I retired as the chief, but I spent, almost 3 decades doing everything else, including investigations. So he gave me a call, and I said no, but here I sit today, right? I knew how to drive a car and put gas in it, and suddenly entered the car dealership world. But it's more about the strategy, right? It's knowing the mindset of the bad guys and how they think. And then, just learning the market and doing that, we've really developed really strong strategies, right? We went from 60 cars stolen in 6 months to, 10 last year and 8 recovered. So it's been successful, but it's changed. I was hired for lot theft, and now our biggest problem is fraud.
Yeah. Well, let's come to fraud in just a second. But when we talk about lot theft, a lot of our dealer friends are listening as we come into the holiday season. Many dealerships will be closed on Christmas. You do a great service to the auto group, our Zeigler Auto Group, by sending out an update before we go into holiday seasons, reminding everybody to lock it down. And that's not been something that's always been top of mind in automotive. What's important to do as you come into the holiday season to help protect dealership assets on a day or a couple days when, most lots are quiet, right?
Yeah. Well, and let's just say, when we go out of our patterns and our procedures, those bad guys know it, right? When we're closed days we're not supposed to, that's a great time to come on our lots. And the goal is, just make it harder for them to steal, because if you can slow them down long enough for us to get law enforcement, on the lots, but it's just being smart. I always, a couple days before every holiday we're going to have a closure, is I just put out a checklist like, hey, make sure your alarm company knows who to call, put blockers in the lots, one, access in and out, lock down those keys, just as a reminder, because on Christmas Eve, when you want to get home to your family, no one wants to be blocking the entrances, the doors, making sure the keys are all picked up. And if you just have a simple checklist to go down, but last Christmas was the first Christmas they didn't show up at any of our stores, right? Every Christmas before. I mean, Sam, you probably remember when the bad guys drove through the overhead door on Christmas morning. I mean, I was opening gifts and managing that. So it's just making it part of our process, and they know to anticipate, hey, what do we got to do? They're not looking for the old email. I'm sending them a checklist for every single time.
Yeah. So, Karianne, what would you say to the dealer who's watching this show right now that's like, hey, I remember the good old days when in automotive you could leave keys in cars above the visor, and, it made it easier for customers to go on a test drive. It made it kind of a more warm and welcoming environment. Those days are long gone. Where did the pivot come from, and how should dealers be thinking about securing things like keys in cars and doors and windows and all those things?
Well, and I always say if they can access it, they can steal it, right? So you just have to make it inaccessible. And I think today's customer and consumers, they know the world we live in, right? They know what's going on out there. And when you tell them certain things take a minute or two longer because it's making it more secure or we're protecting their identity, they really do appreciate it. The only one that doesn't appreciate it is the bad guy. But
can't you speed this up?
Yeah, you don't even need keys to steal a car anymore, right? We're dealing with things that even if the keys were in the visor, you don't need the keys in the visor. They have a piece of equipment that can do it in less than 3 minutes while you're home in bed. So it's really more complex than it ever has been. And so you have to know what's happening out there in order to put things in place so it doesn't happen or it makes it more difficult to happen.
Yeah. Do you have any opinion on? There was recently a fine levied by courts against Kia and I think Hyundai for making vehicles a little too easy to steal. And there was a TikTok deal that was all the rage a couple of years ago, teaching people how to use something as simple as a USB.
The Kia
device to
boys.
steal them.
Oh yeah.
And in your role as head of security, how are you seeing that, and then how are you relaying that information across the auto group?
Well, things like that, anything, I'm always trying to stay abreast, because let me tell you, theft is a moving goalpost, right?
Yeah.
And so soon as we lock down, how many years does it take to get that from Hyundai and Kia to fix that problem, right? They're doing that and they're moving on to the next thing. So it's staying abreast and then putting that information out. If I see it at one dealership, then it needs to be known at the other 39 so that we can stop it there, because it is constantly changing. And you'd think after 30 years of doing this, I would be, I'm constantly surprised at, oh my goodness, why didn't I think they were going to do that next? But it's staying abreast and being willing to make the changes and not doing it just because we've always done it that way, because it's too fast. The environment's moving too fast and they're professionals.
So Karianne, a longtime listener of the show, has posted to social media. Lauren Klein says, professional thieves know how to get in, disable the OEM systems, and get off with that vehicle in under 60 seconds. Lauren Klein continues, do you recommend dealers equip their inventory with additional GPS for inventory management security rather than relying on OEM supported systems? So what do you say to somebody that says, hey, I don't need extra stuff because the factory installs a device? That's all you need.
Well, yeah, right. But it's about layers of security, right? And having, you know this, we use LoJack at Zeigler Auto Group, right? So I know where every single car is, those off-lot alerts. And is it foolproof? There's no system that's foolproof, but it gives us that extra layer of security and that extra tool for recovery on the other end to know immediately that the car left. It's great that the OEM has the theft deterrent, but I don't notice it till 12 hours later when we open up. Then I'm making the call. Then I'm calling the police. But if I know at 2 a.m. that a car's been stolen at 1:58 because I got that alert, whatever system I'm using, I'm hot on the tails, and recovery before damage has occurred is more likely, right? And lot management, I can find any car whenever I want because we know where they're all at. There's a lot of different tools out there. They can steal it in under 60 seconds. But if your lot's blocked, if your rows are blocked, right? If they see that you've set up some minimal, takes 10 minutes at the end of the night security procedures, they're going to the guy down the street who has it, right? Because they want to be in and they want to be out. And we all have jurisdictions or live in places that it's not really a crime to steal a car anymore. So
what are the, so we've had some people on the show that have kind of begrudged, hey, police aren't going after all the stolen vehicles. There are vehicles out there that they just aren't interested in pursuing. What is the difference in different municipalities between the forces that are willing to go after and aren't? And then given your police background, Karianne, how can a dealer, a single point trying to protect their inventory, how can they collaborate with local law enforcement in a positive way to help get that back if it is stolen?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, a police officer, you're a cop because you want to be a cop and you want to chase the bad guys and you want to catch the bad guys. So it's not that they don't want to chase that car, right? A lot of times, depending on what jurisdiction and their climate, there are some lane lines. It's the prosecution. If the bad guys know at the end of the day, even if the police catch me, I'm not going to jail, I'm not going to serve any time, then they're going to continue to do it because they're, that's a huge profit margin. But I will say law enforcement wants to catch the bad guys. And, Sam, you asked, how can you make those relationships better? As just any dealer, it doesn't matter if you're the size of Zeigler Auto Group, smaller or bigger, having that partnership with local law enforcement, because you want your lot to be the one at 3 a.m. they're writing their reports in, right? That when they hear the alarm go off, and you do that by supporting their events, right? I'm telling you, cops will do a lot of things for food, right? A night shift, sending pizza over there. But it's also when they show up, have the information with you, right? Don't say, we don't want to prosecute. Some guy just stole our car, be a fraud, and we don't want to prosecute. Because the police are not your repo agency. And as soon as you make them feel like that, that's a long relationship to try to mend.
So props to all law enforcement out there on this holiday season as we approach this time where everybody's hard at work. Right now is the time to be making those connections, making those contacts, and having those relationships because they're all hard at work, right?
Yeah,
and in a lot of cases, they're working on a holiday season where it's tough to work. And,
well, and you bring that up too, Sam, right? We also have to, really lock things down on that holiday because most police departments are at minimum staffing, right? There's less officers and more calls for service. So you're not going to be at the top of the queue when your cars go missing. So anything you can do to, make that a little harder and you not be on that call list is going to help you in the end.
So, Karianne, let's transition off physical theft because that is a big deal. But even a bigger deal, vehicles are becoming more expensive. Yuli and I report on this a lot on the Car Dealership Show. New car prices are at an all-time high. Used car prices have escalated to an all-time high. And physical theft isn't the only type of theft that's going on. We're seeing all sorts of things. We're seeing income fraud. We're seeing synthetic fraud. We're seeing all sorts of attempts by folks to get vehicles from dealers and steal them and then take them elsewhere. What are some of the most concerning trends you're seeing right now in those types of frauds, and what are you doing to combat it?
Well, Yeah, fraud. I mean, fraud, whether it's identity fraud, where you've actually stolen someone's identity, synthetic identity, which is sort of, the Frankenstein, you made someone up and you've created a credit profile, for them, or artificial pay downs where, you make it look like that car's paid down. Next thing you know, they're trading it in and putting it on another vehicle. Those fraudsters, COVID monies have dried up. They are professionals, right? And so in order to I see one every single day. Not a day goes by I don't see a fraud trying to come through Zeigler Auto Group. But it's having education and communication within the auto group, right? I work really hard at, I go out and do PowerPoints and training on actual case studies that have happened, right? What are those red flags? How are those red flags changing? What do you do when you see one of those, right? Because no one knows it's happening other than the person sitting there. And if you can educate that salesperson, that F&I guy, like, hey, this doesn't sound right. In this business, what I've learned is everyone's a people person, right? You know how to read people. And if it doesn't seem right, take the minute, ask for the extra ID. And I also, make sure I'm accessible to anybody in the auto group at any time. So when that service advisor is getting that bad credit card of someone trying to pay for that $1,800 repair, with something fraudulent, anybody can call me. And then we use that as an education tool and let the rest of the auto group in the industry know.
It's interesting. There are probably a lot of auto dealers that are watching today that would love to pick your brain. So we're going to pick it a little bit here. Most dealers and general managers will hear from their teams, their finance managers or their sales managers, like you said, hey, you know what? They said all the right things. I really wanted to help them get into this vehicle. And, fraud in a lot of cases ends up becoming who's the best salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people, Aaron will often tell us, hey, if they just go do something productive in the business world, they'd be pretty successful because they're
big time.
A lot of the fraud, a lot of the theft, it's pretty creative, especially with some of the AI generated things that are going on out there. It takes a lot of work. What would you say to a finance manager out there that says, hey, I was just trying to help them and then I became victim to a fraud? You've got to watch those red flags. And maybe what are some of the, what would advice be you'd give to the finance manager, and what are some of the biggest red flags over this holiday season to watch out for?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest red flags, and if you're just at the F&I, and you're going through that, is they're trying to rush you through the deal, right? They're trying to rush you. They're keeping you talking so you're not paying attention. Because usually phone numbers don't match up. It's an old address, but if you look at the bureau, it's on there, but it's their previous address, right? It's all the little details that if you're rushing through a deal or you're distracted, you're not going to pick up on. And on the holidays, what you see is, let's come in and try to rush a deal on a Friday night when maybe the lenders, are doing some auto approvals. You're going to get that cleared through. You want it delivered now. So you're going to leave with that car only to find out, come Monday or Tuesday when they want to ask them, the lender wants to ask some questions. That person's gone. It's been VIN swapped. It's got a new title. It's on its way. All those techniques, the online deals, right? You never know who you're dealing with online. 18 months ago, we used to be able to say, take a picture of their ID next to them, right? And send that to us. Now with AI, oh my goodness. Yeah. Sam will tell you this, right? I have a stack of like, oh, look at this one. They tried to say they were this person. That's not even their hand, right? Yeah. But just with AI.
So Karianne, one of the things you mentioned earlier is you send this information out across the group. And so that's the benefit of being a privately held multi-store rooftop group, right? Mm-hmm. And those that come into the group get the benefit of that information. And that information helps stop fraud in its steps, because you've identified fraud schemes that have gone store to store to store to store and put them down, right? Because we're able to communicate. What advice would you give to a single point operator, or maybe somebody with 2 or 3 stores that doesn't have the benefit of that scale? Where could they go to see some of these trends that are emerging? Mm-hmm. Because they come fast and then they go even more quickly, Karianne.
Well, I think it really pays to be involved in, like, if your state has an auto dealer association or locally, and have those groups that that, hey, we just got broken into last night, or hey, this guy's been in our store and we know it's fraud, because it's that communication. I'll catch frauds here, let's say in the Chicagoland area, and they're showing up down in Houston, right? Because I have contacts all over, and I try to belong to as many, fraud association groups, law enforcement groups, and all those things, so that I'm always hearing about the different trends, and it's having, that type of community. But even if you're one store, you got to know the store down the street and have the relationship that they'll say, hey, you know what? They tried it here. They're probably headed your way. Because you just, when you're siloed, you're going to get hit because you don't know what's going on. It's moving too quickly. The fraudsters, soon as you figure it out, they figured out a new way, because the tools are only the tool, and the person behind, that sale is the one that's going to be able to pick up on things that those tools that, we're buying and exchanging and ID scanners and all those things aren't going to pick up. But you're going to say, you know what? I tell people all the time, always go with your gut. Always go with your gut and never hesitate to call me.
Yeah. So Lauren Klein says, sounds like we need a CDG fraud alert tracker and jingle, LOL. And by the way, I agree 100% with that. We love our jingles and our trackers here. But I think you're right. Like belonging to an association, Don Hall's with the Virginia Auto Dealers Association. They're the Chicago Dealer Trade Association. A lot of these share information and will share expertise and resources between stores, and you can see those emerging. There was even a recent scheme that was emerging in the auction space where bad guys would pretend to be somebody and pick up vehicles you bought and run off with those. And the only way you can stay on top of that is by knowing, Karianne. And it's tough to know if you're not part of a network, Karianne.
Well, and also every state has auto theft teams, right? Whether it's by county, whether it's statewide, and having that association or knowing somebody who can maybe, every couple months have them in or get to know who the leads are, so they can come in and tell you the trends that are locally in your area, because they just move around, right? If I hear that it's happening in Houston, I'm going to count to 45 and it'll be, happening here. So you just have to, your eyes wide open.
Sam, you said something that was very, interesting. And I just want to not push back, but add some context to what you're saying, Karianne. So, it's counterintuitive for us sales guys to trust our gut in something like this. I mean, to trust your gut, being in law enforcement, it makes sense. But when you get that hungry salesperson on a Friday night, like Sam was saying, you're about to close and, oh man, I just messed up my last check in my checkbook. You sure I can't come back tomorrow with the money down? Like those scenarios where it's like, we're right there. We can get the car over the curb. Can you believe this thing just fell apart? Those are the ones that a salesperson's going to say, let's figure it out, right? Like we figure out everything else, but that's when you got to pump the brakes. This is super important. Yeah.
But I think learning to pump the brakes comes with education and awareness, right? Let me tell you, my first year here, no one wanted to believe what I was telling them, worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
But it was that constant, education and awareness and being available to say, hey, I tell them all the time, I'm giving you all this training not to, put your deals to bed. I'm giving you all this training to make sure you get the deal, right? Yeah. And know when to pump the brakes. And now, now I like to be part of the team, right? I got a lot of junior detective badges I can hang out because they'll call me. You'll never believe this one. I think I got one on the line. And last year, I worked with local law enforcement where a lot of our dealerships are located, and came in and the bad guys were arrested in the store, right? So you could see that it pays off because these guys don't want a bad deal on the record. No one wants to make my security alert, right? No names are included, but they all know who it is. So I think really culturally, safety and security has, moved up. Wouldn't you say, Sam?
Oh, yeah. And actually, so last question as we go through this, we appreciate your time on the show. Appreciate you sharing so openly this topic, which impacts every single car dealer. What do you say to the finance manager, the GM, or even the dealer that says, hey, you know what? It's different here in insert rural part of America where fraud just doesn't exist. It's different here because people don't steal things. What's your answer to that, Carrie?
Well, I just want to say our smallest, most rural stores, the fraudsters that like to do these online deals, I'm telling you, they're looking for those. They're looking for those that, they're hungry to get that deal. They're not exposed to all the fraud you see in the big cities. And we didn't even touch on transportation fraud, but they'll get those deals and they'll probably be stolen off a truck before they make it wherever they were going to be stolen to. But yeah, I would say it's coming to you. If you haven't seen it, you may have already experienced it and just don't know.
So getting educated, formulating a plan, and then implementing that plan is key. Lauren Klein says smaller stores are the biggest victims. Now I'm going to ask, and I promise last up, I always go for one or two extras, but what would you say to a dealer that says, hey, I'm not sure if I need a head of security. I'm not sure I need somebody focused on this role.
Yeah.
What's your take on that, Karianne?
Well, not everyone does need a head of security, right? We're a laundry auto group, but what you need is maybe someone to help you come up with that strategy so that you can figure out what you really don't know and how you can prepare yourself. And like I said, just have yourself in touch with those associations, with the law enforcement, right? Anybody can call me, and I do get calls from all over the country in different auto groups like, hey, we heard about X, Y, or Z. The only way we stop the fraudsters is by addressing this all together, right? When we stop becoming such a big target, they're going to look for a better target.
Yeah. All right. What's one thing every dealer, whether they have a head of security, whether they've got a GPS, whether they've got anything, what's one thing every dealer could think about doing this holiday season to help protect the house and ensure less?
Lock up every single key. Those damn keys, right?
That sounds so basic, Karianne.
Yeah.
Karianne Thomas, head of security, Zeigler Auto Group, and my office neighbor. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you on the show. Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for coming, Karianne. Merry Christmas.
That is a fun conversation. I remember when Karianne first came into the auto group and everybody was a little bit skeptical. It's like, hey, stop trying to keep us from selling cars, until they realized, hey, our relationships with lenders improve. As soon as the lender sees how aggressive we are at dealing with all sorts of fraud. We don't have finance managers, Yuli, that sit and just hope. Hope is not a plan. Wait, who's the politician that said that? Let's not get political. Yeah. We don't have finance managers that hope. We act, we clear, and then we sell with confidence. And now, listen, is there going to be an exception somewhere? Don't listen to this, Karianne. But yes, I'm sure that there are exceptions, but they're the exception to the exception, not the rule. So fun conversation with Karianne on all things theft. And you're right, Yuli, people hope in automotive. We just love hope, right? So
yeah, because we figured out they know the industry and they're looking for that shortcut. So they're preying on that emotional side of even the salesperson or the sales manager, especially on a slower store. You run into one of these big stores that's pumping out hundreds of cars a month. They understand no one car deal is worth it. Stop, do your due diligence. But maybe a smaller store that's a little hungrier, they're like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll work with you. And it just blows up in your face.
So this message brought to you by Daily Deal Life, car dealership guy coming into the holidays. Because by the way, after we have this little conversation on 700 credit or KPA, we're going to get into an auto group that is selling a ton of cars. And probably Brad Wise says, hey, I need Karianne's number. Well, Brad, you can't have Karianne because we have her and we're not giving her up. She sits right next to me. So let's talk KPA. The 700 credit breach triggered real compliance obligations. So watch this on-demand session brought to you by KPA to understand what happened, what regulators expect, and the immediate steps your stores must take. Watch the webinar by clicking the link in the show notes below. There is no QR code. We'll come back on that on our next show when we've got our regular crew back on. But huge props to KPA for supporting today's content, including that fascinating conversation on protecting the house in automotive. And Yuli, let's dive straight into our next guest, Bradley Wise, Executive Manager of Ferman Chevrolet, Mazda, Tampa. Brad, welcome to the show.
Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me on.
Merry Christmas.
Great.
Merry Christmas.
That, first segment, very much.
You can't have Karianne.
Okay.
Is theft a big deal in your world, Brad? I mean, how much are you seeing? You sell a ton of cars.
Yeah, surprisingly not. And knock on wood, I'm listening to that. And I'm from the Chicago area originally. I worked there for 25 years. And
oh, wow.
In this market's big and booming, and we have lots. I mean, I shouldn't say this. We have lots spread out all over the place and run into very few problems that way. So it isn't because we do an exceptional job like they're doing and you're doing by having regulations and joining groups, and that is just hasn't been a problem, but it opened my eyes to a lot of things. So I'm glad I was able to listen to that.
There are things that are worth thinking about, and it is interesting how, as Karianne said, a lot of these things spread, and sometimes they can hit us even while we don't know exactly, what's happening. So you guys are in search of a huge goal, Brad. Tell us, how many units are you working to hit as a Chevy Mazda location in Tampa, Florida?
Well, I've been here almost 8 years, and in the beginning, I always believe in having something to play for. I came from a sports background, and I operate this business very much like a sports program as far as a lot of my ideologies and philosophies. So a team needs something to play for. So I looked at the opportunity that is in front of us with the population, and I looked across the street for the largest Ford dealer in the country, and the largest Toyota dealer, and the largest Honda, and the largest GMC dealers. I mean, I'm literally on Las Vegas Boulevard of high volume dealers, and this store was not one of them. So that's why I jumped at the chance to be able to serve here and get that opportunity. And we've come a long way. We've basically tripled our sales. Our fixed operations has tripled, and by many observations, we're doing awesome. But I know there's more in this market. And so we set a goal of 900 cars a month. That would put us up with the top dealers in the country. And I'll never retire till we hit that. And we sign every email with hashtag 900. We have hats and cakes and cupcakes, and we're manifesting that. But we're doing more than manifesting that. We're recruiting the right people and sending the right message. And hopefully I can be on this show someday soon and celebrate that with both of you.
Brad, you need to make a deal with us on this holiday week. That day you hit it, you got to come back on, because we got to hear how you did it.
That's the deal.
How many units did you clear last month? And November's a tough month, right?
It was a tough month. We did 580 last month.
Okay, yeah, so you're knocking on 600.
But the most we've done is 740, and that was pre-COVID, and we've done 6s here and there. But if you look at it, it's about 25 to 30 units a day. We're open Sundays here, and if you break down that number, it's very, very doable. So we're ready to do it. We're building the processes and the accountability. We already have the right people. It's just getting them to be more and do more.
Yeah. So give us one thing that you've done. You talked about tripling, right? Volume and grosses, and you've had a big increase already in the organization. What's one or two things that have made a big impact that others could learn from this December of 2025?
I think internet lead handling, all the payroll, all the accolades, all the tickets, and all the pats on the back go to the showroom managers and staff. And then there's that department in the back I call the leads we can't see, that are handling those phone ups and those chats and those internet leads that in a lot of cases, they're not getting the respect or the pay or the admiration or the recognition like the department up front. Now listen to this. If somebody walks into a store physically, how hard is it to sell them a car? I mean, the closing ratios are 60%. The real work is handling these leads that close at 10%, to beat the phone, 75, 100 phone calls a day and getting nothing out of it, right? And so in my mind, I kind of reverse that to put a lot more focus on the internet lead handling, the prices that we quote, the trade-in values that we quote. We were very conservative in a lot of, sight unseen appraisals and the interest rate payments that we would quote. It was almost like we were discouraging people from coming in. No, we wanted to just give them the best price. Half the dealers aren't even answering the lead. So why would we give them everything? We're big on trade. We're probably the only organization in the area that doesn't have forced addendums. We're the only one. Most of the dealers in our area are, really advocating these hidden addendums. In other words, they're not telling people about that on the price over the phone or online, and then they come in and then it's a surprise party on why the price went up. So we won't do that. Never will. We're super high on transparency, and you just mentioned in the onset of the podcast today that 56% of consumers are very interested in that. Right? Yeah, they don't want to play games. Right. So that really struck a chord with me that we're on the right track with that.
So Brad, walk us back and talk to us a little bit about this this department. It's a BDC, right? Glenn Lundy would call it frontline sales, right? Yeah. How many people do you have in that BDC department? Do they take calls inbound, outbound? Do they do service and sales? How do you train? What does this team look like that are these unsung heroes?
Yeah. So, the Ferman organization has many different franchises, and luckily for us, we get to operate our stores differently. We can use our own creative brush to do that. So what I did, we have an enterprise BDC that's offsite that does a lot of the heavy lifting, and they do a great job. But I needed, 6-figure people here at the store that were the watchdog of leads that weren't responded to quickly or not responded to accurately, didn't have the creative juices to be able to see if there's a deal or not. So I call them goalies or something like that. So I have, one in every rooftop that's the watchdog, looking at the screen, making sure no one's shoplifting kind of person, right?
Yeah.
At that whole process. And, we've tried a lot of different things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. And we're going to probably blow that up this year in our quest for 900. We feel like there's a lot of opportunities there, and some things that maybe we can put everybody together. Because one thing that we've discovered that everyone's separate, 3 different buildings, putting everybody in one, where it creates more excitement, but it also gives more depth of talent to be able to look at 3 people, look at a deal to try to figure out what it's going to take to earn their business. So we haven't mastered it at all, but I can tell you that it just seems like it takes a lot more talent to sell a car online than it does in the showroom. I might offend some people, and it has, and I have offended some people that, how hard is it to sell a car to someone's already here? With internet lead handling and phone ups and chats, those are hard.
100%.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are asking in today's world, they're saying, hey, is a BDC a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do I just need to have salespeople handle their own leads? So if I understand what you said right, the organization has its own BDC, and then you've got another layer that's kind of pulling things in from that professional BDC. Is that a salesperson that would then go out and meet and greet that customer at brick and mortar on the floor, or is it an additional layer that customer encounters before sales? And how do you help it be a consistent experience from BDC through this other layer into the brick and mortar, which is a big challenge for automotive?
It is, and it's a challenge for us. But to answer your first question, these are top line desk people. They don't sell the car. So these are the people that that could go up to the desk and work a deal just like anybody else. But their focus is not on the showroom. It's not on the lot. It's not on anything other than what's handling digitally on those leads that we can't see. Somebody who has that expertise that is listening to podcasts like yourself, trying to learn the greatest, and whether it be AI. I mean, if they don't know what Podium and Matador and Impel are, then they're really not those kind of people. So so they're top line managers that are there. That's that important to me. So that's why, to answer your question, that I don't think enough dealers put enough emphasis on putting talent back there, as opposed to $15 an hour inexperienced people that like a lot of BDCs have, and they do a great job. But I think you just need to have another layer to make sure that we're offering solutions, offering alternatives, trying to solve the problem that is keeping the guests from moving forward in a creative way and in an abundant way, in a massive outbound way, and knowing the finer points of all our emails are going into spam. Okay, well, that's some of the finer things that. Mm-hmm. What good is an email campaign if they're all going into spam, right? Or the phone numbers don't work on our website. I mean, it's just a whole. I call it spillage. Every organization has X amount of spillage. I'm trying to reduce that spillage.
So, Brad, in your quest for 900 units, you're getting a lot of props online. Scott Simon says, Brad Wise is a great car guy and even better human being.
Wow.
Scott Simon says that. Nice. Car Tool says, Ferman Chevy's operation is super impressive. We did a walkthrough on 2 separate occasions, and it did not disappoint. By the way, you're in Tampa, Florida. I want to do a walkthrough in December or January because you're in like the perfect automotive place to be selling cars in the winter. Yes. So that from Cartool. And then Lauren Klein asks a great question. As you think about your BDC and then you think about this layer that pulls people into the brick and mortar, have you incorporated AI or video into your lead response?
Yes. We experimented with an AI company, and there's a lot of when you're trying to deal with an offsite BDC, it has to work for all the stores, not just one store. Yeah. So I get that, So we experimented with that, and it's certainly amazing. A lot of things that it can do, especially handling leads in the middle of the night, setting up appointments for in the morning. and then and handling all the mundane tasks. You look at 30 leads where you get 100 of those, and it could be somebody at the state fair trying to get a Chevy t-shirt. To have human beings just wiping themselves out all day on those is not a good thing. So I see AI doing a lot of great things on that regard, but to be in the front of day one leads, day two, it requires some human intervention looking over the shoulder until it understands it. So I'm pro AI, and all the companies have their strengths over others, but for us, we're pretty much starting over, because we're going to put everybody together, and we've got a new leader up front in our variable department that brings some expertise that I didn't have, who has a track record of selling 1,000 cars a month at 2 stores that he's worked at.
Wow.
So we're going to kind of I got us to the NFC Championship. Now I've got Jimmy Johnson coming in to win us the Super Bowl, and I couldn't be more excited about that. So I'm going to, kind of give him the history of the store, but he obviously has sold more cars than we have. So that's what he wants to do. We kind of want to just start over with it.
Brad, you're not Belichick in this case, are you? This is not a Belichick scenario, is it?
No.
Yoga Car says, Brad, rounded up to 1,000 goal. And then a comment I was just thinking as you were talking about AI and its role in your organization, you were about to say it's not ready for prime time in your goal, which is you want human beings to have connections with customers on the other side of the phone. And you believe that human process can do better than the AI can if they're well trained. Is that true?
I just think that if you're a salesperson cradle to grave and you have this tool, it can be a great benefit to do a lot of your birthday tasks, your anniversary tasks, your leases due tasks, your happy birthday, your Merry Christmas tasks, a lot of that. Take a lot of those things off your plate and maybe deal with the unengaged leads that are older. And then that way you can focus on the leads that are more likely to get on base from the money ball aspect. Because you can just wear a human being out when you're not getting any response out of a lot of these. But they're important. These people buy. If you look at the statistics, the gestation period, when someone submits a lead, life gets in the way. What was a good idea today for consumer X, something happened, and then they're going to re-engage with it maybe 3 months later, 2 months later. But we got to be top of mind again, right? Not just say, everybody buys in the first 4 days and then, throw it to AI. And I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
But there's a lots of different schools of thought on internet lead handling,
Yeah. So, all right. So the lead comes through. It makes it through the BDC. It comes through to this additional team. Your salespeople engage on the showroom floor. What's your process look like at this store seeking to sell 900 units a month? What does your process look like on the sales floor?
We have salespeople that only sell internet leads and phone ups. They don't take any walk-ins. So we have kind of 2 divided groups of people, and we kind of match the skill set. This salesperson might be better with walk-ins, and this person might be better. But that also creates some, and for lack of a better word, animosity. Why aren't I getting the leads? But then they don't realize that it takes a lot of work. They just want the leads that want to come in and buy a car today.
Yeah.
So. And I get that. I was a great salesperson. I wanted all the toys too and didn't want to share either. So having empathy for that. So we have 2 different departments. There's lots of walk-in traffic here. Like I said, we're on this busy street. So no matter what side you're on, you can eat, but it's just a different skill set. But the salespeople out front are allowed to come in there and sit at an open desk and take leads. And a lot of them never come back again because they weren't very successful with it. So we need both. They're just 2 different ideologies.
In your pursuit to 900, how many salespeople do you have?
Right now we have 44, and Alex Flores, who we brought in, we should talk about him. One of his first things is we need to recruit a lot more salespeople.
Yeah. So what's his target? Where does he want to go to?
Oh, well, he's done it already in 2 stores. He's done it in Capital Chevrolet in Austin, Texas. He's done it at Charles Mon Toyota. He, along with Chris Martinez. And that's the reason why I'm a big self-development guy, think and grow rich guy, Tony Robbins guy. And it's simple. Success leaves clues. If you want to get a desired result, you need to do what those people did or get those people. So this is somebody who's gone into a store that's selling 300-400 cars a month, and almost overnight set it on fire in a good way where they're selling 900 to 1,000 cars a month. So this isn't talking about it, or this isn't teaching it. This is somebody who's done it on the, so, this is a playground for talented people. One of my biggest strengths is I'm a recruiter. And it's one of the 4 things I focus on is recruiting, just like on a sports team. You can't win without super talented people. You got to have somebody who can kick a field goal in the snow, 50 yards, freezing to death, or thread the needle when you're in the pocket. It's not the plays or the coach or the fan base or the training. And yeah, that's all important. But without those special talented people, you're never going to win a Super Bowl. So I just landed the Tom Brady of the variable department. And I couldn't be more thrilled about that.
So, Brad, you took him to the NFC Championship under a strategy, and now Alex is going to expand that strategy. He's going to add more salespeople to the floor. As you do that, I have 2 questions. Where are you getting these sales candidates, good sales candidates that are qualified to lean into your goal and produce? And then what are you doing on the buy-in standpoint to get the people that are already there bought into, hey, we do need more salespeople so that we can hit this 900 goal, and it's not just flooding the floor, Brad?
Well, because recruiting is one of the 4 things I focus on. I'm big on social media, and I do it with a lot of intention, where I'm trying to position our dealership and our town, Tampa, as a place to move. So therefore, my DMs are I'm like an Instagram model. I get filled with DMs all the time because my target is that talented person in Minnesota who's had it with the sales manager and had it with the snow and say, I want to come down to sunny. I'm leveraging the fact that people want to live here, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if I was
in the weather, it's the best weather.
Yeah, right. No state tax, beaches, sunshine. Who wouldn't, right? And I'll give you a funny story about that. I also engage in Facebook groups. So I got into an automotive technician Facebook group, and that was a mistake because automotive technicians, what I wanted to do was to try to recruit 40-somethings up north to come to. Why are you waiting until you're 60 to retire? Do it now. Come down, work the last 10 down here. And I got kicked out of the group. They don't like suits in that group. I'm not one of them. So that was kind of fun. I mean, I got so much hate going into the technicians, but I'm a maniac, so I like that. But I'm on Clubhouse every single morning, networking with top. Listen, people who are in a Facebook group, people who get up at 5:30 in the morning on Clubhouse, people who listen to this podcast and others. These are people who are head and shoulders above everybody else, that are really into their job. They're a learner. They want to get better. So that's a target audience to recruit, as opposed to people who wake up 10 minutes before they need to get ready. They're listen to some nonsense. We don't want those people. We want.
Brad, why don't other GMs and owner operators see this? So many GMs and owner operators just churn through talent that just seems to cycle endlessly in a market. You're saying don't do that. You're saying get out on social media, be more prominent. What's stopping most dealers and GMs from taking that strategy or approach? Why not more social out there? Limiting
beliefs. The whole world's full of limiting beliefs. And they've copied their previous manager, so they think that's the only way to do it. Where, I've studied the top. I mean, I have notes and notes and notes on Alex Flores, even before he started working here. Brian Benstock. Okay, we can go on and on of people that when they're talking, I'm listening because they've achieved the results that I want. And it's that simple. It's why go east looking for a sunset when they've done what you want to do? And in this amazing world we live in with AI and all this content, there is no knowing problem. It's a doing problem, right?
Doing. Yeah. That's Tony Robbins.
If you stay in your cocoon at work and only listening to the people around, there's a whole other world out there of people who are willing to share their secrets, who are the most, the kindest people, willing to help, big time people. It's amazing how that. So the information is all available to you. It's just a lot of limiting beliefs I call them flat earthers, people who are on social media. They're either running from someone so they don't want to see, their ex-wife see them or whatever, or they're conspiracy theorists, whatever. So the people that work here that are not on social media, I call them flat earthers. They don't like it, but it's just it's the greatest thing ever. You can communicate with people, direct message. You can target people technicians or F&I managers or used car managers or whatever.
So how did you get Alex? Just I actually have 2 last questions. Hey, how did you get Alex? And then speaking about social, what are the requirements of your salespeople on social? How'd you get Alex?
I got Alex for the reasons I just said. We're both involved in the same social media groups every single morning. We're hearing each other's voice.
know each other that way.
we know each other a long time. I've been to conventions with him. Some of it was the law of attraction, to tell you the truth. I think, two people, it's no accident how this happened. That might, roll some people's eyes, but if I believe it and it makes my life better, so be it. I don't really care what you think. But I really believe that is the case. But in his case, he was a dealer, and I think he wanted to move out of Texas for whatever personal reasons, and he didn't want to travel so much. He's got this beautiful family, young kids, and he was gone traveling all the time. And I know that Tampa, Florida was on his short list of places that he would move. And, we just kind of looked at each other and like, well, why not? I mean, this is a position that he's way overqualified for. But what's more tantalizing to him than the ego or maybe even the money in the beginning is doing something great, to be a part of something and just annihilate the competition. We're car people, right? We got big egos. We're really excited. We're like, we're competitive as it can be, right? So the both of us together just blowing up this place, putting everybody out of business, and just taking what's ours. That's really kind of what it is.
I love that. It all began on social. It all began out there knowing each other, hearing each other's voice, and then knowing him well enough to understand what it was that would light him up. And I agree with you. A big goal, bigger than oneself, is something I think most people, employees, they crave. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So Brad Wise, you've got to come back on the show when you hit 900. Is that agreed, Hannah?
Absolutely.
Brad's coming back on, and you got to bring Alex with you. So you and Alex, we're doing it together. So Brad Wise, executive manager, Ferman Chevrolet Mazda, Tampa, Florida. The beautiful weather. Thanks for being on the show today, sharing your perspective.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Brad. Merry Christmas.
That was a cool conversation. Most dealers are not on social media enough. They just are not. So, and I love it. Hannah piped in. She is on it. Sam Shinobi says hi. Got a bunch of great comments on social media. I was just informed there's a fire alarm that's about ready to go off in this building. So we're going to wrap this thing before the fire alarm destroys everything we got going here. Yuli, have a great Christmas. Have a great
Same to you, my friend.
We're going to be at rest on Wednesday and Friday, I believe it is. Back on Monday, I think. We'll post it to social. And then we've got a big New Year's Eve special episode coming up. So we're super excited for that. It will be a best of episode featuring some of our best conversations year to date. And by the way, don't forget, January, it's our video MPI video sales contest. We want to have everybody that is using video out there. We're going to compete at the highest level. By the way, I'm so fired up with what Brad said. Everybody wants to be part of something bigger. Bring it. 900 units. I got to get with some of the teams. And Dancy says, see you next Monday. Happy holidays. To our loyal listening audience, thanks for watching the Daily Dealer Live. We break down the biggest moves in the car business as they happen. Don't forget, we're here live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Everybody have a great holiday. So if this is your world, hit like, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you never, ever miss a beat. Yoga Cars says Merry Christmas. Yoga Cars, Merry Christmas as well. Igor K says good show, folks. Everybody, we'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, guys.